Good afternoon, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends joining from the COP29 venue in Baku and remotely from worldwide. Welcome to our side event, High Integrity Nature-Based Solutions, Nature-Based Climate Action Perspectives from the Global South. This side event is brought to you in partnership with Boticário Group Foundation for Nature Protection based in Brazil, Sitawi, a Brazilian NGO dedicated to the development and delivery of financial solutions for biodiversity and climate positive impact, Radboud University in the Netherlands, and the German Institute of Development and Sustainability-IDOS. I am Idil Boran, professor at York University in Toronto, Canada, and I'm also faculty fellow at the Daedalus Institute for Global Health Research at York University. I am the convener of this session, and I will also serve as your moderator today. Climate change and biodiversity loss are deeply interconnected. There are global challenges with far-reaching adverse impacts at local levels, and it is clear that the globally agreed climate mitigation and adaptation goals cannot be achieved without the protection and restoration of nature and ecosystems. Recognizing this, many countries are increasingly incorporating nature-based solutions into their climate strategies. However, as nature becomes a central pillar in national climate plans, concerns persist, particularly around its potential misuse as a simple offset, for example, allowing fossil fuel emissions to continue as usual. Additionally, despite widespread acknowledgement that climate and biodiversity must be addressed together, the absence of an integrated global policy framework often results in fragmented actions. What we need are high-quality, high-integrity initiatives that truly integrate nature into climate adaptation and mitigation efforts, initiatives that empower local actors, that sustain livelihoods, and enhance well-being in impactful, inclusive, and scalable ways. Research and innovative partnership across sectors and across actors can play a critical role in bridging gaps, implementation gaps, by connecting knowledge, policy, finance, and people. We organized this side event to foster an exchange of knowledge and experiences, and we've brought together a diverse group of speakers, including representatives from international research partnerships, as well as practitioners and funders from around the world and Latin America. Together, we will discuss how to connect climate resilience, ecosystem protection, and empowered communities through examples of North-South and South-South collaborations. Our goal today is to engage with you, the audience, in identifying key takeaways for actions that are impactful, inclusive, and scalable. Actions that truly work for climate, for nature, for the planet, and people. We have an excellent lineup of speakers today who will share their expertise and insights, and I'm very thankful to them and our partners for creating this panel. And before introducing them, I'd like to briefly highlight a relevant project that brought us here together to provide also some context. I am the lead of a newly funded project, a consortium, international consortium project called BioCam4, Biodiversity Integration in Climate Adaptation and Mitigation Actions for Planet, People, and Human Health. This project has just begun, and we have funding from 3 sources: the New Frontiers in Research Fund in Canada, from Germany, from the German Research Foundation, and from the UKRI Economic and Social Research Council. Our partners are from Germany, the German Institute of Development and Sustainability, from the UK, the Zoological Society of London Institute of Zoology. We have also Radboud University from the Netherlands. Then from Costa Rica, we have CATIE Solutions for Environment and Development. And from Africa, we have the Africa Research Impact Network based in Nairobi, Kenya. And from Rwanda, we have the Greater Virunga Transboundary Collaboration, together with many of our network and affiliates that support the project. We have just started this project. It is in the process of being underway. And our goal with this work is threefold. We focus on mapping global collaborative initiatives that integrate nature into climate actions, providing a comprehensive understanding of their distribution and impact, as well as the identification of gaps, geographical gaps around the world on the distribution of nature-based climate actions. We also, the second goal is to engage local stakeholders through our deep dive studies with our partners based in Kenya, Rwanda, Costa Rica, and Guatemala. We aim to identify context-specific challenges and opportunities for effective collaboration and engaging the communities in the process. And our third goal is to build science policy synergies. We have been engaging with the UNFCCC process for many years, and we continue to engage with the UNFCCC and now also with the Convention on Biological Diversity to share our knowledge but also to learn about the process to inform our research. So as part of the last point, the science policy synergies, we have written a public letter with our team based in the UK, led by Professor Natalie Patorelli from the Zoological Society of London Institute of Zoology, where we have written a public letter calling for the UNFCCC and CBD, so the climate and biodiversity processes, to establish a joint program to better align the goals of the two conventions, and possibly also to extend into the 3 Rio conventions. If you would like to support this campaign, I encourage you to visit our website. You can find our information and my contact information by following the QR code. Without further ado, let's get into our work today. We are, as we work together with our partners, we're also collaborating with other consortium projects, such as Achieve, which is going to be represented here today at the side event. And we also build a network of affiliated and sister projects as in our work. And we're absolutely delighted to welcome our speakers today, who have graciously agreed to be part of this conversation. And I'm also very thankful to you, the audience, for being here. Our focus today will be on bridging implementation gaps by connecting knowledge, policy, finance, and people. And I encourage you to actively participate in the discussion as we have our speakers share their perspectives. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. We have, other than myself, Sebastian Reyes from Radboud University, Juliana Ribeiro from Boticário Group Foundation for Nature Protection. Then we have Ines Dombrowsky, German Institute of Development and Sustainability, IDOS. We have Heike Henn, German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. And last but not least, Fernando Campos, manager of conservation and climate finance in Sitawi, based in Brazil. I am now delighted to introduce you to Sebastian Reyes from Radboud University. Sebastian is a PhD candidate in environmental politics and governance at Radboud University in the Netherlands, and he's part of a Horizon Europe project Achieve as part of his PhD work, and we have the privilege to have him today to speak about the project. Sebastian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Idil, for the introduction. Today, I'll be talking about the Achieving High Integrity Voluntary Climate Action Project, or Achieve, which is led by Radboud University together with 12 other partners from Europe and Latin America, with the objective of strengthening and scaling high-integrity voluntary climate action efforts by subnational and non-state actors like city and regional governments, companies, financial investors, and civil society. Now, the landscape of voluntary climate action is very diverse. It includes individual pledges or the engagement of these actors in voluntary carbon markets, for example. However, today I'm focusing on a particular type of voluntary climate action initiatives called climate cooperative initiatives. These are multi-stakeholder partnerships that bring together two or more actors to contribute voluntarily to climate mitigation and/or adaptation. They have grown immensely over the last decade. For example, the Global Climate Action Portal registers nearly 170 initiatives that engage over 30,000 actors. These initiatives are one of the main channels through which non-state and subnational actors engage in target setting and implementation. For example, they carry out functions like knowledge production and dissemination, standard setting, financing, and technical on-the-ground implementation. However, as these initiatives have grown in relevance, so have concerns over their integrity. And integrity is a very challenging concept to define. It's very multifaceted. For instance, it includes accountability and transparency and capacity and effectiveness considerations. So are these actors setting ambitious enough targets, and are they meeting their promises? Are they being transparent and accountable? And do they have the capacities to deliver on these targets? However, integrity also incorporates how these initiatives address trade-offs and synergies with other environmental concerns and sustainable development, and justice and equity considerations. So who participates in these initiatives, who participates in decision-making, and who stands to benefit from their activities. So in order to operationalize the assessment of the integrity of these climate cooperative initiatives, we defined these different integrity dimensions that we know are not exhaustive, but they are our starting point for our assessment. And now our assessment is based on the analysis of a very large sample of initiatives. It's based on the Climate Cooperative Initiatives database that registers over 900 initiatives, aggregating more than 140,000 instances of actor engagement. For each initiative, we collect data across different categories. For example, their targets and plans, their functions, the outputs they produce, and where they implement. And this is all based on publicly accessible information. The results that I'm presenting today are based on a subsample of 267 initiatives that are recognized by the UNFCCC through the Global Climate Action Portal, or which were launched in the 3 most recent COPs, because many of these initiatives are often launched at this high-level event. I also want to highlight that we have another subsample of initiatives that focus on nature-based climate action, and we're going to use this subsample to better assess questions regarding environmental integrity and how they address linkages with biodiversity and climate action. Now, I cannot go over all our initial results, but I want to give you some key insights from our most recent analysis. Regarding how do initiatives perform, we compare the outputs and activities they produce. So for example, if they produce reports, knowledge products, policy tools, or how they engage new actors with the functions these initiatives say they perform. And we see some concerning trends. So effectiveness, this output effectiveness has been going down since 2018, a slight downward trend. And this raises concerns over the capacity of these initiatives to deliver on their functions, but also maybe relates to a lack of commitment and maybe these initiatives just being paper-based agreements and not really translating into actual activities and products. Regarding transparency and accountability, we also see some concerning trends. Less than half of the initiatives have any monitoring and reporting arrangements in place. And the newer the initiatives are, the less likely they are to have these arrangements. 1/3 of initiatives does not report any target, any quantifiable target, and this hinders the possibility to evaluate their progress or hold them accountable. Now, initiatives are not subject to transparency and accountability processes the way nation states do, and we could question if they should be. However, the lack of accountability and transparency erodes trust in this kind of initiatives and their potential contributions. Now, regarding implementation, I want to give you some insights based on where we register that these initiatives say they implement, where they have ongoing implementation, or where they plan to implement. Most instances are in the global north. We do see some positive signs, for example, regarding adaptation initiatives, reporting more implementation in the global south. However, this raises concerns over how these initiatives are engaging in implementation in the global south. More importantly, when they do implement in the global south, they do not incorporate local actors as active leaders. So there's also space for improving the integrity of voluntary climate action by improving inclusiveness in the leadership of these initiatives. Regarding linkages with other sustainable development and environmental concerns, we do see that many initiatives have at least, for example, 5 linkages with other SDGs, but the SDGs that are most closely linked to biodiversity are often under address. So there's also opportunities to strengthen the linkages between biodiversity and voluntary climate action. Now, before I end, I just want to say that maybe some of the insights that I presented today are a little bit concerning or not so positive. However, we do see the potential for these initiatives to close mitigation and adaptation gaps. They hold a lot of value for innovation and policy diffusion and experimentation, and also target setting and implementation. But if these promises are to be met, integrity concerns also need to be addressed. If you want to get to know more about our project, please scan the QR. We also have a survey on integrity. We know that our concept is not exhaustive, so if you have any insights into what integrity means in the context of voluntary climate action, that would be deeply appreciated. I also left a small piece of paper with the QR code in your seats. And that's all from my side.
Thank you, Sebastian. The work that you do at Achieve is extremely important, especially in terms of mapping and understanding the distribution and the trends for action that is happening around the world, and the way you are also able to assess and also see the initiatives, the cooperative initiatives that integrate nature into climate action is really valuable. Thank you for doing this work, and thank you to your team for this work. Now it is my pleasure to invite Juliana Ribeiro from the Boticário Group Foundation for Nature Protection based in Brazil. Juliana is a leading expert in nature-based solutions. As the project manager at Boticário Group Foundation, she works in finding innovative ways to use nature to address climate change and build a more sustainable future. Juliana, thank you so much for being with us. You have honored us, and please share some insights into how you work and the specific experiences at Boticário Group Foundation. We are especially interested in hearing how your newest program on nature solutions can contribute to our efforts. You have the floor.
Thank you, thank you, Idil, and thank you everyone for being here for this opportunity of in first hand speaking about this Nature Solution Program. And we are in first hand presenting this Nature Solution Program. The aim of this program is to unlock the potential of nature-based solutions in Brazil. So nature-based solutions, the way we see it, are actions that use natural process and ecosystem services to address the most pressing challenges of our time, such as climate change. We believe that nature is the key for a more resilient future and more sustainable future for our cities. So this is not an environmental concept. We believe this concept is focused on societal challenges. So we use nature to help society to adapt to climate change. And this is such a challenge, right? So we have created in 2020 the Urban Bioconnection Alliance, which is aimed to craft collaborative solutions to empower public policy and drive NBS investment, making Brazilian cities more resilient to climate change. And together we have 12 of the most important organizations in Brazil that work with nature-based solutions, such as the Brazilian Panel on Climate Change, represented here by Professor Andrea Santos, WRI Brazil, TNC, C40, GIZ. Some of them are global institutions, right? ICLEI, Global Compact, and other institutions. So together, we foster NBS in cities through joint action plans, influencing public policy and building capacity for effective NBS implementation. And we have 4 strategies for this huge effort. Awareness, we want to raise awareness and engagement, build capacities for implementation, enhance public policies, and unlock funding and business opportunities. And so how do we do that? We wanted to understand what were the most impacting and gaps and also opportunities, because when we find a gap, we also find an opportunity, right? So we understood, we went to talk to cities to see, to try to understand why NBS was not gaining scale. It was only pilot projects, right? So the cities were saying that they needed money, they needed funding. We went to talk to banks and investors. Well, the cities need money. What's happening? They said, well, we need better projects. So we want to break this gap, right? So these are the main gaps that we have identified in 4 years of studies in this Urban Bioconnection Alliance. Lack of bankable projects, limited and inaccessible resources, insufficient regulation, limited training and experience at local level, limited understanding of NBS, and challenges in the NBS value chain. For example, we have the project, we have the funding. When you try to implement the project, you have problems in find the plant seedling, for example. So this is a problem that we have to solve when you want to gain scale, right? We also tried to understand what was the situation of vulnerability of cities in Brazil. So this graph here shows the average of risks across the debt capacity of cities. So what we have here, you can see that the third image that you see shows the highest average of risk of vulnerability of cities. And it also shows the highest number of cities that have problems with fiscal health. So they cannot afford to have finance. The banks won't allow them money. They cannot, well, the problem is with debt capacity. So the cities that are the most vulnerable cannot get money from finance they can't afford financing from banks. So this is a huge problem. How can we give money to the cities that most need it when they are not able to achieve this money, right? And we also try to understand where were the cities, where are the most vulnerable cities. So this map of Brazil shows. Can you see those little yellow dots? They show the most vulnerable cities, but not only the most vulnerable cities. We crossed other criteria such as population, GDP, natural coverage. So we have the best return of investment of adaptation. These are the cities where there would be a better return of investment in adaptation in Brazil. And so we created the Nature Solution Program that comes in 6 components, which are the project incubator, DFI's training. These 2 I'm going to explain a little bit more in the next slide. Knowledge and communication, which is our where we go better at Boticário Group Foundation. This is what we have been doing for since 2017. We were the first organization to talk about nature-based solutions in Brazil since 2017. And in material in Portuguese, we have lots of studies about this. And enabling environment, for example, we at this moment, the Brazilian government is constructing the National Adaptation Plan, and we have helped all the government to include nature-based solutions in the National Adaptation Plan. For every action, for all the sectors of the plan, we could find actions about nature-based solutions for adaptation. So this is something that we do, financial mechanisms, and also capacity building. The project incubator is going to be launched next year, right? So this is some spoiler for you. It will be led by C40 and also with the support of BioConnection, Urban BioConnection Alliance and WRI Brazil. We want to support Brazilian cities to develop development projects with NBS, right? And at the end of the year, in November, before COP30, we're going to have an investors roundtable, a very high-level event in Rio de Janeiro. So these 30 cities will present their projects to potential investors. And they will be, I guess they will be fighting to finance this very nice projects that we're going to help to build. And one more component of the project is DFI's training. So we want to raise awareness and provide capacity buildings for the development finance institutions, because when we went to talk to the banks, what they said, that they needed more understanding. In the high level, the directors, they needed to understand why it was important to invest in nature-based solutions. And so, thank you. I'm just closing. And so we created this technical visit, in-person training. We're going to take the bank directors to know real projects, real implemented projects of NBS. And here are some of our publications. All of them you can find also in English, in our website. And also, I would be glad to send them to you if you want. After our talk, we can you can talk to me, and then I will send it to you. Nature-based cities, cities of the future. Here we have lots of implemented NBS projects in Brazil, and you can see the state of the art of NBS in Brazil in these publications. Well, thank you very much, and back to you, Idil. Thank you.
Juliana, thank you so much. The work that you do at Boticário Group Foundation for Nature Protection is incredibly valuable and so multi-dimensional. You focus on cities, as we've heard, you engage communities, but also you have direct impact, actual impact with the government and policy engagement. So this is really very pertinent to what we need to be doing, what many stakeholders need to be doing today on bridging nature, climate, and people. So thank you so much for your work. I have now the great pleasure to invite Ines Dombrowsky from the German Institute of Development and Sustainability. Ines is part of the Biochem 4 project and heads the environmental governance department at the German Institute of Development and Sustainability. As well, Ines is an honorary professor at Leuphana University in Germany. Ines, it is a great pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to hearing your insights from the research that is being done at IDOS. You're doing social science research on the societal dimension of NBS, and please share with us today on how you reflect on what has been discussed already in view of IDOS research, that the existing research that has been done on the societal dimensions of nature-based solutions. Ines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Idil. And yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here and to be involved in this panel. So I will talk a bit about insights from 4 different case studies we did in Latin America on the societal implications of NBS projects. They are all located in Colombia, but have really different features. And I want to draw 3 main lessons from these 4 different cases. And this is work that we have done in previous projects, including projects funded by the BMZ, but also other funders. Yeah, let me briefly say a couple of words about these 4 projects. So we are talking about 2 donor-funded EBA projects, one funded by the World Bank in the Paramo region in the Andes, looking at restoration and serving water provision services for the city of Bogota. Then a BMZ-funded mangrove restoration and canal maintenance project in Cartagena city. A RED Early Movers project in the Colombian Amazon, co-funded by Germany, and an area-based conservation project in Santander, implemented by Colombian authorities. So my first lesson, we really see that these NBS projects provide a broad range of both ecosystem and non-ecosystem related benefits, but also costs to the communities involved. That's producing winners and losers. Thus, it is really key to involve all stakeholders from the beginning to ensure fair distribution of benefits and costs, and to recognize rights, ways of life, and knowledge of those affected. So, for instance, in the EBA projects, we found that overall the communities mentioned that benefits overall really prevailed costs. But what was also interesting is they mentioned more benefits from the project that were not ES ecosystem related than the ecosystem related ones. So for instance, communities really appreciated increased knowledge and awareness, individual and community empowerment, and also increased social cohesion. Costs were then more related to illegal settlement and hunting activities, for instance, in the Cartagena case, or in the Paramo case related to restrictions in land use. At the same time, the ecosystem-related benefits were a bit less obvious, and I will get back to this. Now, in these 2 donor-supported EBA projects, communities really appreciated being involved from the beginning, and their personal development and community development opportunities, confirming the importance of inclusive decision-making. This was completely different in the Colombian Santander project establishing a protected area. Here, the local community has already been applying an ecosystem-based approach, conserving the forest, in acknowledging all the benefits that these forests provide. Now the government came and imposed the protected area project, not providing clear information on where the boundaries are, really providing a lot of uncertainty to the communities regarding their tenure and property rights, and not providing benefits to the communities through this protected area project. A second lesson. In all the projects, we observed that powerful and political and economic actors in the immediate project surroundings continued with much more harmful activities than those by the communities involved. So, for instance, in the RED project, which provides performance-based payments for verified emissions reductions from deforestation, we found that contrary to the assumption that the local compensating communities are the main drivers of deforestation, it is regional elites that drive the deforestation for land speculation and cattle ranching. Also taking advantage of a vacuum in the post-conflict situation after the FARC left. And these activities even increased after implementing the project. Another example in the Cartagena case, the local communities on one side of the mangrove lake are asked to protect the mangroves and to restore them, while on the other side of the mangrove lake, real estate developers are continuing cutting the mangroves for the real estate development and touristic purposes. In the Paramo region, the project addresses small-scale farmers, but 60% of the area are covered by large-scale farmers, and they continued their harmful activities. And in the Santander case, it's downstream of the protected areas, there are large poultry farms that also pollute the water and diminish the availability. So let me get to my third and last lesson. For all the projects, it is the question to what extent these small-scale projects really also provide the biophysical benefits that they are expected to provide, and to what extent they will run in the long term even after funding will have finished. So in the case of the World Bank funded project in the Paramo region, we did the research 7 years after it had been concluded. Still, the communities perceived overall benefits, but they also complained that activities had stopped and knowledge had lost, and that a follow-up project by the Bogota water utilities did not involve the local communities and didn't provide opportunity for employment for the local communities. Or in the Cartagena project, the flood protection benefits are unclear, since there is a lot of flooding during heavy rainfall events because the city drains the flood into the mangrove lake, and that cannot be prevented by the mangrove restoration activities. So to conclude, I think ensuring the distributional the recognition and the procedural justice elements in this project is really key. And we need to take the broader environment into account and acknowledge that often the effects of these projects remain rather limited and are also often overridden by more powerful economic and political interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ines, for these insights. They're very instructive, and in fact, we focus on understanding the circumstances of implementation in protected areas, and we focus on justice, inclusion. Those are absolutely imperative for initiatives that that have impact and that can have far-reaching influence also on for transformation. So far, we have heard about research, about partnerships that do this kind of community engagement and impactful work, but really nothing can be achieved without funding, without finance. And so this is something that needs to be talked about when, if our interest is to enhance to transformative integration of nature in climate action, we have to also talk about finance, we have to talk about capacity strengthening. To that effect, we are honored to have Heike and Henn to join us today in our panel. And it is my pleasure now to invite Heike. I would like to say a few words to introduce. Heike Henn is Deputy Director General for Climate, Energy, Environment at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. Today, we have asked her to share some insights as a funder about North-South collaboration, capacity strengthening for climate actions that integrate nature that benefit local communities. Now, my question is, BMZ is active in the fields of nature-based solutions, and in that context, it is supporting civil society organizations and indigenous peoples and local communities. They do this in the Global South as well in various ways. Heike, could you elaborate on your experiences of what has worked well and what still needs to be done to increase ambition, to increase equity and scaling in nature-based actions on the ground? Heike, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Idil. Thank you for the invitation, and also thanks to the panelists already for the insights on research, and me representing a government that also starts sometimes initiatives. It was interesting to listen to how you, from a research standpoint and the accountability, look at initiatives. And also hear what the potential is, but also what the pitfalls are in conducting these programs. So Germany is really a strong believer that we have to do more jointly with our different roles as different stakeholders for biodiversity, for climate, and for development. And from my perspective, this cannot be divided and should necessarily be linked to each other. So the Paris Agreement, the GBF, Global Biodiversity Framework, and the SDGs have to be an integrated framework of objectives. And if we want to achieve those objectives, nature-based solutions, as you have also for Brazil, Juliana explained, and a direct and inclusive participation of local communities, of indigenous peoples, is really key to deliver on the ground and with impact. So this is what we strongly believe and also try to incorporate in what we are doing. And in this respect, coming from Kali myself, I think Kali achieved a lot regarding the Kali Fund that is planning to disperse at least 50% of the funds to IPNLC directly, but also with the famous Article 8. Oh, sorry. I just get carried away by the subject. So I'm now less relaxed, but better hearable. So that's good. So Article 8J was also, from my perspective, a great achievement, as well as the biodiversity climate decision. So this we should take to Baku as well. And Germany is providing funds and is a funder. you're right. But the 1.3 billion euros we provided last year is an important, and like NGOs have or ODI have suggested, is a fair share. But finance itself is not producing impact. It depends really, as we heard also, on how we do it, with whom we are doing, and really, yeah, what is in our mind in delivering and shaping partnerships. So we provide finance bilaterally, multilaterally, also direct to IP and LCs, and try to come up with more innovative and flexible ways of doing it. And also in the next year, we will take up the co-chair in the Forest Tenure Pledge or the Forest Tenure Partners Forum to deliver the next Forest Tenure Pledge after 2025. That is about nature-based solutions, forests, and indigenous people and local communities. So in what we do, we try to strengthen partnerships. We have tried to have a rights-based approach. We try to be long-term and really flexible. From my perspective, this is important, specifically when we want to have direct access to funds for IP and LCs. So looking to my right, what works? One of the examples, try to be inclusive doesn't work with being heard. So sorry, I cannot turn my head around. So one of the things that works is, for example, with Fernando, who will speak to Sitawi later, but we have a cooperation with Sitawi, and there's an innovative element with crowdfunding, bioeconomy, with value chains, and really being innovative, working directly with local producers in the Amazon with nature-based solutions is something that works from our perspective. And also another project with Brazil, working directly with civil society. A foundation value Produce a Preserve was created jointly by trade unions and civil society organizations. So this is also where we want to strengthen agroforestry in the Amazon. But also we have multilateral approaches that from our perspective work. We only committed recently new funds to the CIF, Nature-Based Solutions, Nature, People and Climate and Forest program that has also a component that really provides direct support, direct access to funds for IP and LC. And in Cali, we created a new window for the Legacy Landscapes Fund, where only IP and LCs that directly manage protected areas can apply for funding. So this is just a couple of things that we try to do, and we try to learn in these partnerships also what we can do better, where we need to change our way of doing things and do it then differently afterwards. So try to be a learning system. And I think what the Brazilian government tries to achieve in the last 3 days of this COP is to take up from Cali the call for more coherence between the 3 conventions and really have like land use at its core, from the biodiversity sphere, the climate sphere, and then the UN CCD COP. That is really something that we fully support to better deliver for people and planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights. It is extremely inspiring, and the work that you do, especially with the impact on the possibility of achieving more coherence between the UNFCCC, the CBD, and the UNCCD, is absolutely very timely and really quite far-reaching. Thank you so much for your insights. And now, last but not least, I have the pleasure to invite Fernando Campos from Sitawi, based in Brazil. Fernando is at Sitawi, and Sitawi is a Brazilian NGO specializing in the development and delivery of financial solutions for biodiversity and climate positive impact. And Fernando works on the initiatives that Sitawi implements, and with a focus on social and economic benefits for local communities. So your experiences are really valuable for us, Fernando, and I would like to ask you to share a little bit more about the work that you do, and give some examples of initiatives of what has worked and what can be done better. Thank you in advance, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Idil. Thank you for inviting me to be here in this panel to discuss with you guys and to present some of our work. I should say that I was quite surprised that you know our work with GIZ in Brazil for the crowd lending platform, which is a blended finance mechanism to support impact business in Brazil. However, I'm not going to discuss this initiative in particular, but I can provide the details because it's quite an interesting one. We lend capital for those impact business through a crowd lending platform. So it's really interesting, and I can share with you. And then we did some rounds of investments with GIZ support in the past. So what is about Sitawi? Sitawi, as you already told you guys, is an NGO based in Brazil that we develop financial solutions for social environment impact. But it's not just climate and biodiversity. It's social in a broad sense. But when it comes to biodiversity and climate, our solutions and actions are related with deforestation, land degradation, land use change in a broad sense. And why is that? Because land use change is the major source of carbon emissions in Brazil, and also is one of the main drivers of biodiversity loss in Brazil. So when we focus on deforestation and degradation, is something we can deliver results for fighting the ecological and climate crisis both together. Given that, many of our solutions, our financial solutions, they are structured and implemented to promote economic activities that conserve forests and the other ecosystems in Brazil. One of our best cases to demonstrate what I'm telling you guys is the Nijmegen territorial program. This program is developed in the heart of the Amazon forest, in the mid portion of the Juruá River. Juruá River is a river from the Amazon basin, is in a really well conserved area. And this area is quite far away from the threats, from the deforestation threats that normally you hear on the news, like illegal mining, illegal logging, really far away from this kind of threat. Doesn't mean they don't have threats over there. They do, but not these ones, not those ones. So this program is a partnership between Sitawi, Natura, which is a cosmetic company, is an international cosmetic company nowadays, the state and federal environmental agencies, and most important, 7 local organizations. Up to now, the program was already received financial support from USAID, GIZ as well, Mott Foundation from the US, and the Governor's Climate Forest Task Force. But what is about this program? What is related to the financial solutions and governance? 9 or 10 years ago, we were invited to go to the territory. And we started our work there with a highly participatory and strategic planning design, which turns to be a theory of change, a territorial theory of change. For you guys that you're not familiar with theory of change is something we discuss. We design the change we want to have over time in a 10-year period, and then we need to plan which activities we must implement right now to achieve the desired impact in the future. So we did that with the territory. At that time, when we discussed this with the territory, with the local communities, local organizations, the territory, most of the actions were related with basic needs, such as energy access, because they didn't have this kind of stuff, so they wanted to have. And also, they were really willing to have financial support in a non-reimbursable way for supporting for strengthening the local value chains. And here it's worth to say the local value chains were the Arapaima value chain. Arapaima, or for Portuguese Spanish speakers, pirarucu. It's one of the largest fishes in the world, the largest fish in the Amazon basin, and also the vegetable oil and extracts value chain. They wanted to work with those value chains because they see the needs. But after we implement this for several years, 6, 7 years, successfully doing that with these activities they wanted us to help them, and also another organizations came to territory to support those economic activities as well. After we saw that, we realized that many actors were there working in the same scope than us, we started again a hearing process with the local organizations to understand if they wanted to keep our program, our territory program, working these value chains. So not surprisingly, their aspirations changed over time. So 3 to 2 years ago, up to now, we know that their worries and aspirations are more related to transforming the territory a place the youth wants to live, a territory where they can live a life worth living, I would say. And this is not about job creation. This is not just about getting food. It's about dignity. And this is what they are much more worried right now. How can I have a life of dignity over there? And this is not a task. It's not an easy task, because how can you measure that? How can you ask financial support for grantors or development institutions abroad and tell them, okay, I'm going to work in this kind of way of living of them, but I cannot provide you such a concrete outcome. It's difficult. And also, that is something that really related with the discussion here is about the governance process. Because if they want the value chains to keep going on in a successful way, we need really to support the governance process, how the decisions are made in the territory, and how can we strengthen their governance process over time. Because by the end, if the governance process, they are not well established, the projects we are willing to implement in the territory, they are not work at all, because the decisions are not taken in a participatory and collective way. So this is how we try to implement how can we bring the governance, the importance of governance to develop financial solutions in a way to promote and strengthen local value chains. So I believe I will stop here and then I leave something for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fernando. It is so inspiring to hear, in the context of financial solutions, to focus on dignity, values, and how to tackle the challenge of measuring that. This is the key, and you've been very inspiring. Thank you so much for your insights. Now that we have heard from our panelists, I would like to turn to the audience. In fact, really, there is no side event yet that can be truly productive if it doesn't also have the audience as part of the discussions. So I want to begin with asking a question to you. And thanking you very much for being here, for giving life to our discussion. The question that I have here is, you have heard some experiences, some work that's being done. Do you have also experiences on the ground or as part of partnerships that you would like to share with us? Of course, if you have any questions to our panelists or to the panel in general, you're most welcome. But definitely, if you have some experiences to share of work, partnerships, the floor is open. Okay, and please introduce yourself before asking your question.
Oh, hi there. My name is Marcus Taylor. I'm from Queen's University in Canada. Really fascinating panel. Thanks so much for your collective talk. This really was interesting because this is one of the first panels that I've heard over the last 3 days that looks at some of the real world of adaptation, some of the much more complicated ways that adaptation processes, financing meets real world political issues, social issues, and power. Let's put it that way, particularly Ines. On one hand, it's very disappointing to hear of these aspects, and yet it matches up precisely with some of the kinds of things that I've looked at over the last 8 years in terms of climate resilient agriculture programs in India, in which the distribution of benefits from adaptation processes have often been incredibly uneven. High levels of elite capture, marginalization of certain groups within communities. And I think, and certainly a focus on quantifying benefits in a very superficial way, not the kind of way that Fernando you're talking about here. So one of the key elements is that I find is that in many of the discussions going on, financing and donors don't want to hear about this. They much rather, and I think this is one of the big problems with adaptation funding at the moment, financing wants to have visions of adaptation that are relatively simplified, that lead to very simple, linear, objective outcomes towards adaptation, that bear really a sort of tangential basis in reality, where we see far more complex social process of change. If adaptation is about shifting things such as land use, resource control, etc., it is inevitably going to have messy and shifts or power balances on the ground. And yet this is so much ridden over within the official world of adaptation. And yet when financing for simplified projects meets the reality on the ground, we end up with maladaptation time and time and time again. And so I'm really encouraged to hear that your organizations are looking at this and looking at this in much more complex ways. It's just a sort of call to ask whether finances, and I guess, Heike, this may be a question for you, whether it's possible to incorporate more latitude in financing for adaptation, to ask some of the more difficult questions when it comes to questions of justice, about who is benefiting and how, outside of platitudes about communities and shared benefits, because we all know that communities have hierarchies too. And so for the panelists, I'm wondering, is there a way to get to grips with this much more messy reality of sort of inequalities and power on the ground and bring that into adaptation? It's not a plea to stop adaptation funding, etc., but rather how do we bring this to the foreground and deal with its messy nature? Thank you.
Heike, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, thank you. It's as relevant as it's complex, and I'm happy to try to come closer to an answer, but I'm certainly not having the answer. Maybe I would start out with that the justice component is key, but I would say not only for adaptation, it's also for the transformation in the mitigation world also key. So this is really something that in everything we do, we need to incorporate and maybe even better than we do right now. So I think there's really something where we need to step up what we are doing. On adaptation, it's complex, it's local, context specific, and maybe locally led adaptation is one important component. But hearing you also that you say, of course, communities are not without power structure and not without their challenges as well. But I think if you reduce the different layers in between what a funder is thinking or a partner is thinking what it would achieve, and then through so many layers, it trickles down to the community level. That is, I think, one thing that you can do, and also create transparency and accountability in all directions. Also, I mean, asking us hard questions. I think this is what we can do also. So providing direct funding, working, but also in systems that embrace the complexity, like, for example, agroforestry, are some of the ways we try to approach this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Heike. And also the work that we've heard from Sitawi is also grappling with addressing those complexities as well.
Yeah, just say that Sitawi is an intermediary. Okay, we are kind of connecting the capital, the difficult capital to touch from the grassroots organizations, and then we try to make it easier to pass to the local organizations. What we try to do most of the time is during this time when the local organizations, they are not still capable to be that accountable or transparent, we do a lot of capacity building trainings over time. And now, right now, in the Nijmegen territorial program, after 80 years work with them, we started to discuss a possibility to develop a local fund for adaptation measures, because nowadays we have a really severe drought in the Amazon basin, and they cannot ship anymore for delivering the fishes. So what kind of measure they can put in place for this adaptation measure that they can put in place for that? But then we start to discuss this kind of fund mechanism, locally led, in a way that we hope they can access other kind of resources without our help. So it's difficult. The thing is that we got to do that because Mott Foundation is kind of a believer. The Mott Foundation is providing a financial support, not really asking for concrete indicators, because they believe in the governance process. So we need to find out this kind of organizations, the funders. They are not providing a large amount of funds. It's not that much, but still, for the Brazilian context, where the communities are, it's quite a lot of financial resource. So this is the dots we are trying to connect, or the puzzles, the piece of the puzzle we're trying to put together. But I know it's quite complex to address your question. We try to do that in the field like that.
Thank you, Fernando. There was a question somewhere. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Martin Zimmer. I'm a mangrove ecologist at the Leibniz Center for Tropical Marine Research in Bremen, Germany. We work a lot on mangrove re-establishment in the context of nature-based solutions for climate change, mitigation, and specifically adaptation. And we always try as much as possible to include local perspectives and the local needs and requirements. And in that experience, I would like to know how you, with your projects, handle potentially competing or even conflicting interests from different groups of local actors, because they are there. So we cannot avoid them, but how do we handle them from your perspective? Thank you.
Totally. Yes, and that comes to the strong governance process, or a strong governance systems establishing the territory. Because I can say for Brazil, in our context, in the past, when you want to do a traditional development project, the first thing you do is kind of destroy the social cohesion of the local communities, to put local leadership together each other to make a conflict. They are trying to weaken the governance system in that community. We need to come back. We need to turn this around. If the conflicts, the interest conflicts exist in the Nijmegen territorial program, but they respect the governance system in the local, in the region, because they have their own way to take the decisions. So each year they held kind of 3 or 4 meetings with all the communities in the region to describe, to plan the territory, to discuss the projects coming to the territory, to decide if the community altogether want to go to this direction or another direction. For sure, some people in this room, this meeting, they don't completely agree. But if the decision is taken is taken in consensus in the meeting, they accept, because they accept the governance system established in the territory, because it's a strong one. So there are conflicts, but they are addressed in the room in this meeting 3 times, 4 times a year. So that's the answer that I see how it happens there.
Thank you, Fernando, very much. Are there other panelists who would like to follow up on this? If not, we can move to the next question. Over to you.
Actually, it's not a question. It's part of, you asked if there were any initiatives here.
Yes, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Alberto Palombo. I'm here with Mohamed Delawar. We are the delegation from Rotary International. I don't know if you heard of Rotary here. Rotary International has the Rotary Foundation. And Rotary Foundation works directly with community through a network of 38,000 local clubs. Actually, Rotary is a network of clubs all around the world. And most importantly, 9,000 and growing Rotaract clubs, which is the Rotary for young professionals and college students. And I was very puzzled by the presentation of Sebastian about how many initiatives start and how, and the decline of monitoring. This is quite startling. We have been in this business for 100 years. The Rotary Foundation is 110 years old. And perhaps monitoring is one of our strengths. And that is the reason why, you know, we always trying to improve the way that our very modest resources that come mostly from Rotarians' pockets match with benefactors outside, like the Bill Melinda Gates and so forth. But I see here Boticário, I see Sitawi. I come from Brazil. We are prospecting partners to see how we can make this better and monitor better what we're doing in order to come up with local solutions for a global challenge that we have. So how can we partner in order to monitor better? Because it seems like, yes, proposals come from the communities, we have the same issue. But from Rotary clubs, we Rotarians are more or less disciplined about this. How do we monitor the progress and results of community-based projects, and make sure that we are walking into the direction of initiatives that we have that we have agreed in conventions like this that are coming out, you know, to a betterment of the environment, and more particularly climate change in this case.
Thank you. I guess this question is first for Sebastian, but also for the entire panel as well. You can start by addressing this.
Sure. First, I want to say that the kind of assessment that we do, it's based on publicly available sources. And of course, we see that many initiatives do not report having any kind of like monitoring and transparency arrangements. We do see that older initiatives, like initiatives that have been there for a long time, more often have this type of transparency arrangements. And we also see that initiatives that have these monitoring arrangements often perform better, or significantly perform better in terms of output performance, or the performance graph that I showed. We do see a need to strengthen transparency and accountability in these initiatives. And I also want to highlight that many of the actors that lead these initiatives are, for instance, national governments from the European Union, international NGOs, also from Europe and Northern America. And these actors, as leaders and often funders of initiatives, hold the potential to really strengthen integrity and strengthen how they monitor progress, how they are transparent, especially for large initiatives that aggregate a great number of factors. Of course, if we have a bottom-up initiative in the global south that already has limited capacities, asking for very transparency or monitoring requirements that are very burdensome on them. It's of course a very complicated question. Why would we ask these smaller initiatives to already put more effort into this reporting tasks when they are already constrained in their own capacities? So here, these key leaders and funders from the global north could really leverage improving monitoring, reporting, and transparency so that we can then assess their outputs, their effectiveness, their integrity. Because of course, also our approach hides a lot of the contextualities that all the other panelists highlighted, right? Like we need a mix of these more quantitative, large sample approaches to evaluate integrity and effectiveness, but also qualitative case studies that show the importance and the nuances of context, I think.
Thanks. Are there other responses from the panel? Ines.
Yes, I mean, monitoring is really key for these types of projects. And at the same time, if we really want to do it scientifically, soundly, it's hugely challenging, obviously, given that we have different types of biophysical outcomes to measure, we have social outcomes to measure, and basically it would need to be forever, so to say, ideally, as these projects are supposed to last. Yeah. I don't have easy answers. I mean, when we look into the literature on monitoring effectiveness of NBS, we see that there's more literature on the biophysical than on the social impacts. There's little that integrates the two because it really needs an interdisciplinary perspective. Actually, this is something we want to address in this new project that Idil Boran presented in the beginning, that we want to bring this global monitoring of initiatives together with experiences from case studies. And hopefully, by the end of the project, come also up with a bit a smarter way to do so in the future. But it needs much more conversation also among us. What are indicators in these different spheres that maybe even the global monitoring can integrate, and that can be substantiated then through local case studies. So hopefully in 3 years, we will have a bit more specified answers. Thank you.
Thanks.
So did you listen? Monitoring is even difficult for the European ones. Imagine for us in Brazil, it's much more difficult to know because we still have the financial concerns. What we do monitor is most of the times indicators as outputs when we have the grants during the process of our project. But monitoring in outcomes, but monitoring some change or impact, it's really impossible to get financial resources to do that. Because most of the times they just want, okay, during the grant period time that you're going to provide, and then you just report some outputs. And that's bad because when you come to social issues, like I was telling, how I keep or change the way of life that is really subjective. And also when it comes to biodiversity, we are talking about the ecological indicators that, okay, if I'm trying to restore a land or something like that, the water quality is not 6 months or 1 year. The water quality changes over time, 3, 4 years. I don't know, something like that, but even more. But I just get the financial support for 1 year. I'm not really expending time and money for doing that for years after. So this, I really don't know how to do this. No, we simply respond what the grantors they are asking at the moment. Really.
Are there other questions from the floor or other experience sharing? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Masfin. I'm from Ethiopia. Yes, we do have also nature positive food system program in Ethiopia, Kenya's, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique, which is supported by Canadian government. And the nature-based solution is there, and we are trying to help communities to have resilient on adaptation and mitigation. It works great. My question is to financing governments and agencies. Sometimes projects come and good results happen on ground. And how does that go with integration with government? What is your observation, integration and the cooperation between NGOs and governments to scale up the results and to impact the wider community? Most of the time, the good results happening in some areas remains there after the project period. Those community members benefit, but I'm just speaking from my own context, do not spread and remain there. So how do you see, because this government, these global north supporters, you work both with governments and NGOs. So how do you see the integration, collaboration between governments and NGOs so that the good results to sustain and to continue? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. That's very important. Who would like to take this?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's really an important question. Scaling up also between different sets of actors. I mean, if a civil society organization, local community has really great results, the first question is, would that same approach work somewhere else in a different region in Ethiopia or in another country? But apart from that, I must say within our system, we are struggling to have the right mechanism to identify the scalable solutions that are not so locally bounded that they are not scalable, and then in either cooperation with the government and or multilateral organizations scale up this approach in the region or nationally or even in other countries. So we have some success stories. For example, one I remember, it's not nature-based, but locally, so energizing development, where we really had local approaches for decentralized energy provision, also combined to agriculture, that we then were able to integrate in a bigger scale World Bank program, for example. And sometimes also in country, it happens that we can foster linkages to government. But talking about the government relations, we have annual or biannual negotiations and consultations with government. And there it really depends what governments prioritize. So we can make proposals, but then the government decides where they want to cooperate with Germany, for example. And maybe a good program that has scalable results is not in the sector that where the government sees the comparative advantage of Germany. And so then we also have difficulties in scaling up. But it's an important point. Thank you.
Thank you. Heike. Juliana.
Maybe just a very short comment. What we are trying to do, we are discussing this with banks and development agencies, and we are trying to make the conventional projects greener. So if you are already funding or financing a development project for roads, for example, you can make this project greener because it's going to have an impact in the city. If you are going to make more roads, you're going to sometimes have a change in the land use, right, of this region. So you're going to make it less permeable, less opportunities for the water to go into the soil. So you have to give answers. We cannot keep financing the same way as we have been doing until now, because the planet has changed. The climate has changed already. It's not going to. We are already dealing with huge impacts. So I think every finance should be for adaptation and for climate mitigation. Every finance for urban development must include climate lenses and adaptation measures. So we are having a good response from the development agencies that we have been discussing this, and we hope that this program that we are launching here today, we hope that we can help to gain scale in NBS projects in Brazil, and maybe we can inspire others as well.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the floor? We can take one more. If you have a burning question. If not, then this was a very insightful discussion, and thank you to the audience also for engaging us. Before we close, I'm going to ask all our panelists to take 30 seconds to give their final remarks before we close the session. And I have a question to the panel. I would like to hear in 30 seconds your recommendations for building synergies for nature, climate, and people as we prepare for COP30 in Brazil. After all, we want, also in Baku in COP29, we want to see the synergies between nature and climate more prominent in the agenda. But what are your recommendations for enhancing the synergies? So we can go in the reverse order. I'm going to invite Fernando.
Okay, for sure. My perspective, we need to strengthen local governance systems for people living in the forests, living in well-conserved ecosystems. This is the way we can connect the climate, biodiversity, and people, and make the projects less risky, I would say. And then when we make them less risky, the finance sector, they see their projects more appealing to invest. Governance systems for me is the right answer.
Thank you. I would say make all what you do, all our programming, nature proof and climate proof, or nature positive and climate proof, and provide more direct financing to local communities and indigenous people.
Well, I would say that the power lies really with indigenous community people and local communities that do already sustainably use ecosystems and their services, and strengthen them. Don't impose things on them that would hamper their sustainable use. And ideally, initiatives should come from their side, so to say, then requesting certain funding in order to invest into the future. But then their own self-governance is so crucial in order to maintain this in the long run. So any support somehow needs to strengthen the local governance system. I'm fully with Fernando here. Thank you.
Well, in 30 seconds, I would say that nature is the solution. We need to look at nature and learn from all the years of evolution that nature has and learn from it. So we need to include nature and learn with nature and also invest in nature, because nature is the solution for our resilience.
Yeah, I would say I think these initiatives, these partnerships are here to stay, and if they are to deliver more just and equitable and nature positive outcomes, they also need to be more inclusive in how they engage local actors. And it's the leaders and the founders of these initiatives where we need to push them and hold them accountable also to change their paradigms, because we saw it in many of the initiatives who are often led by national governments, city networks. They hold the potential, and we, as from a civil society perspective, we need to push them and we need to question their decisions also.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all our panelists for this lively discussion and also the audience. We are very grateful to have you here. Please stay in touch with us, reach out to us, and we'd be happy to also talk to you in the hallways. Have a wonderful rest of the conference. And before we close, I do want to thank our focal points for all our delegations who've been supporting us in the backstage. A shout out to all the top focal points, and including the lead institution for this side event, York University, and I had the honor to both convene and moderate this session. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful conference.